The Rock Whisperer. Do you hear the earth talking to you?
Unit 1-2. In this particular section, we're going to be talking about mass, volume, and density. Mass is how much matter a particular object has. And we measure mass in our classrooms using a digital balance. In 8th grade Earth Science, possibly in Living Environment, you used a triple beam balance. In Earth Science, we're going to be using a digital balance. The standard unit for that is grams. The next thing we'll talk about is volume. There's different ways to measure volume. We can use beakers, which are not an overly accurate way to measure things, but they're good for measuring large volumes of things. What we will be using in class primarily to measure volume is going to be using graduated cylinders. And you can see graduated cylinders here in this particular picture that show a variety of different sizes, and we know that we measure the bottom of the meniscus in order to measure things with a graduated cylinder. Another way to measure volume is to use water displacement, which we can use an overflow can. You take an object, put it into a can, and there's a spout on the top, and the excess water will flow out, and we can catch that into a graduated cylinder and measure that. Another way to measure volume is also for squares or rectangles, and we can use a ruler, and we can use that to measure length times width times height, and then use those three dimensions and multiply them together to come up with the volume of an object. Make sure on your ruler you're using the correct side. We want the centimeter side, not the inches side. Another instrument that we use in science is going to be the thermometer. Thermometer is to take temperature, and remember that we're always going to use centigrade when we do that. With knowing the mass and volume of an object, you can find out the density of that object or how dense that material is. Density is the amount of matter in a given amount of space. So the more molecules there are in a space, the higher the density. The smaller the amount of molecules, the lower the density, as shown in this particular picture. When we look at different objects, we know that there are 3 different phases of matter. And I'm going to show you 2 different pictures with that. This first one shows you solid, liquid, and gas in a particular size container. And this second picture, courtesy of NASA, shows you what happens when you have a solid, and then you take that solid and you allow it to melt and becomes a liquid. And then if you continue to heat it, then it would eventually become a gas. So remember, when we're doing our labs, we want to remember how to calculate our mass and our volume. That way we can be very accurate when we're calculating our densities.
Don't forget to listen to the earth. You just may hear it speak.